Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with my co-hosts.
I'm Jeffrey Poole.
And I'm Joe Lalo.
All right, and we've got a good guest for you this week, Anthony. I'm sorry, Anthony. We talked about how I wouldn't be able to pronounce his name, and now I'm just like, okay, J. Melchiorri.
Excellent.
All right. We're off to a good start. And we're going to be talking about Kindle Unlimited, Perma 99-cent books, ACX versus traditional audiobook publishing, and lots of good stuff. Before I do his intro, let me do just a little plug, which we never do, but I'm ruining it. I'm ruining our record. You guys remember last month we had on Jay Thorne, Joanna Penn, and Zach Bohannon. I was collaborating with them on a novel that we were doing on a train to New Orleans. That is now available, American Demon Hunter's Sacrifice. And I'm telling you guys about it because if you pick it up at the end of the novel, in addition to getting the free Joanna and Jay's co-writing book at the end of the novel, and free novels from all of us, you can enter to win a guest spot on the Science Fiction and Fantasy show, where you basically come on the show and you get to interview us, and you can plug your book and stuff, of course, at the same time. So that's only for till the end of April. So go pick it up now if you want to try to win that. And like I said, there's some other goodies at the back you can get too. So thank you. And sorry, Anthony, thank you for being patient while I did that. I'll just read your intro real quick. It says, Amazon says, Anthony is a scientist with a PhD in bioengineering. He's originally from the Midwest and now lives in Texas. Those people on the coast are not sure how those places are different, but by day he develops cellular therapies and 3D printable artificial organs. That sounds really cool. By night he writes apocalyptic, medical, and science fiction thrillers that blend real-world research with otherworldly possibility. Apparently it's not a good idea to leave the dogs in while you do an intro. When he isn't at the lab or the keyboard, he spends his time running, reading, hiking, and traveling in search of new story ideas. Hi, Anthony. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
All right. Well, thank you for your patience with my horrible introduction. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into writing and publishing?
Yeah. I guess the easiest way to explain that is I was kind of always interested in writing. I mean, that's pretty much the standard story, right? And on the other flip side of that, of course, when I was choosing what I wanted to do in college and post-grad years, all that stuff, everybody's like, you got to do the thing that, of course, pays the bills and makes sense and is logical. So the other thing I always wanted to do when I was a kid was get into medical science. So it was kind of an easy switch, like, okay, sure, I'll follow the medical science thing, and went with biomedical engineering. But the nice thing was I went to University of Iowa, where they kind of encouraged us, even though we're in engineering, to get involved in something outside of engineering. So back then I started taking writing courses and taking actual workshops with people besides doing the engineering curriculum. And that kind of reignited my passion for writing then. And I had one instructor back then that said, if you want to be a writer, you have to literally write every day. And he said, you got to write like 500 words a day. And since then, I tried to keep that up, and that kind of fulfilled the creative side. And then the second side of things, I've always been interested in entrepreneurship, and that came from the technical side because I see all these cool things people are doing with companies in biotech, and I got involved in some of that myself. But kind of fitting both those interests together, self-publishing when it came time to I finished a book, became the nice entrepreneurial route. So that kind of led me into blending those passions for entrepreneurship, small businesses and stuff, along with the writing. And that's worked out pretty well and got me to where I am today.
Awesome. And that's a good thing to be interested in if you're going to be self-publishing, especially kind of having that entrepreneurial spirit and being willing to experiment and learn how to sell your books online. It sounds like a great college that you went to that actually wanted you to do science and English kind of stuff at the same time. And I guess I always hear from people that are like proud. I managed to get a Bachelor of Science degree without having to take any English, or vice versa. I managed not to have to take any science. It was great.
There's absolutely most of the people, like most of the people you talk to, like in the English classes, they're all like, why would you do science? And then of course the people in science are like, why would you choose to write a paper? You're insane.
Exactly.
But
Well,
I think it kept me sane because I didn't have to do either
no,
one
it
all the time, you
sounds,
know?
yeah, it sounds like a great combination. So for those who aren't familiar with you, you've published in several genres now. What have your experiences been in each of them? And have you found it easier to break in
Oh
one
yeah.
versus the other?
Yeah, the first 5 books I did were all kind of near future science fiction that were, the kind of the medical thriller side. And that was the easiest for me to write because, I'm writing about scientists and stuff that I know, which is always kind of the easiest. You don't have to put in a ton of time researching that. You kind of know the characters, all that kind of stuff. You can come up with a good mystery because you know the subject. And so for me, that was the medical thrillers. But I also decided, for whatever reason, I took the medical thriller genre and put it into the future. So I kind of put this weird niche that was half science fiction, half medical thriller. There was not a really good spot for it on Amazon. And I did that 3 times. then a 4th book. And then I kind of did a military sci-fi / medical thriller with human cloning and stuff. So that was 5 times that I did that. And none of those books really took off more than selling, like a few hundred copies in a month when they came out. And I pushed the promos real hard, did all the stereotypical like 99 cents releases. That was really big then. I think Darren Waremouth kind of publicized the typical 99 cents newsletter blast and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, none of those books had a lot of sticking power. So I was talking to a friend of mine who I had actually helped him with the science for his series, and he was getting into post-apocalyptic books because he was kind of seeing the same writing on the wall. He'd had a traditional publishing deal and was kind of struggling to find what he was going to do now with self-publishing. And so he hit it big with a post-apocalyptic series. And like I said, I was heavily involved in kind of designing the science for these zombie-like creatures. And I was like, well, geez, I mean, I saw what he was doing. So he was like, yeah, you should probably do this too. So it was kind of nice because I took the things that I was interested in, which was the medical science, but I firmly built that into a post-apocalyptic zombie-like creatures. And that's the Tide series. So I found if I could find, a market like that was much easier to break out. And there's all kinds of, it's impossible not to make a pun out of this, but there's zombie readers just devour those books. They love those books. So that was definitely the breakout for me. So that was, if I would have been doing the medical thrillers, I don't think I would have ever, seen any amount of success come out of that, like you get with the zombie post-apocalyptic thrillers.
That's interesting. And do you think it's just that there are fewer readers looking for the medical thrillers, or maybe is traditional publishing putting out more books in that genre?
Yeah. So from my guesses here, and just from looking at the charts, and I have no scientific evidence to back this up, but if you look at like what's popular, not only in medical thrillers, but it's kind of the same as techno thrillers, and kind of your like Clive Cussler type thrillers in general. It seems to be that people are a fan of certain writers. So where people will be fans of like James Rowlands or Clive Cussler and the action thrillers, people are diehard fans of Robin Cook, still, like Michael Crichton type books and the medical thrillers. And it doesn't seem like people go through those books as fast, and they're just kind of looking for the next big name medical thriller writer that they know of. And I think there's a few others out there in medical thrillers that are in traditional publishing that are pumping out enough books that if you only read a book a month or so in these big, thick medical thrillers, you've got enough of those big name authors. So it doesn't seem like there's as many people yet venturing into the indie side of the world. But again, I know that I've seen a couple indies who have done fairly well in that arena, but for myself, I didn't have much luck with that. I know other people who haven't had a lot of luck in that until they switch genres.
Yeah, it's definitely, some people get it lucky right from the beginning, and what they're passionate about happens to be what's hot.
Yeah.
And then, other people work really hard promoting stuff and it never gathers any steam in one genre and then switch to another one. It's great that you had success in post-apocalyptic. We've had quite a few people on who've found success in that. Do you think that it is just kind of the readers are really voracious? You said they love to devour their, not brains, but zombie books.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can kind of judge that too. If you look at sometimes you can have a really good book, and sometimes you see like it doesn't. There's good books that don't have good covers, and I'll get to that. It sounds like I'm kind of going off topic, but my point of measurement here is that there's a bunch of zombie books out there, and there were a bunch of post-apocalyptic books that weren't packaged very well. You can read through them, and they don't have like. It's evident that there were either somebody didn't have editors or things like that, or they make all kind of the rookie mistakes we all make with the cover and the blurb not being up to par. But for some reason in zombie books, those books still can top the charts. And so kind of my hypothesis there is that if you see a field like that where you have a lot of books that look like they're just they don't have quite the professional package yet put together, and they're still being successful, and you see these books keep cycling through the charts, it's because there's just not enough books for those people to read. So they're going to read anything and everything that they see come at them. And I think that's kind of the way the zombie genre has been, as well as the EMP genre. So if you're looking into post-apocalyptic, if you can write a decent story in either of those, it seems like those have taken off, even if all your typical marketing advice isn't followed. So yeah, I'd say those are definitely still easy places to take off, and that's probably why, is because these people cycle through, or those readers cycle through those books so quickly.
Yeah, that's a good tip, actually. If you kind of look through the top 100 in a category and see some of those cheesy covers that are top 5 or whatever, because that was how it was like 3 years ago. I did science fiction romance with a pen name, and there were some just awful covers. And now I've noticed recently they're just a lot sharper. It's a lot hard. It's harder to make that top 100 with something really obviously photoshopped and aliens just. Well, wait, there are some with aliens painted blue that or people painted blue that work well. But anyway, good thing to look for when you're browsing the various categories there. It looks like you've done a Kindle Worlds novella too. How did that work out, and was it worth your time?
So I have mixed feelings about that because it's something that I did because I was friends with the author for sure, and I think the Kindle Worlds are good, but I think Amazon is facing some issues there because the Kindle Worlds, they can't include them in Kindle Unlimited, and international readers can't get them. So it automatically limits the pool of people you're reaching. And I enjoyed writing the Kindle Worlds, and it didn't take me super long to write the novella, which was nice. But ultimately, like from a financial standpoint, it wasn't worth it for me. And that author did a good job of promoting the Kindle Worlds books and stuff. But I think the problem with that at the time we launched that Kindle Worlds was just so many of his readers came from Kindle Unlimited, and he had so many international readers. Then all of a sudden, it's limited the pool. So it's like it's a mixed bag because it's good for networking with other authors that are in the Kindle world. But I wouldn't expect, I didn't expect huge financial returns, and I didn't get huge financial returns. But that being said, it more than paid for itself with the production costs and everything. So, definitely mixed feelings about that. If my friend asked me to do that again, I would absolutely do it again, though.
All right, I ask since I have a Kindle Worlds that's about to launch, and Joe wrote a novel for it. So hopefully you'll get your production costs back, Joe.
I'm positive from judging how the Fallen Empire. I think I emailed you a year ago too when you launched the Fallen Empire series. So I watched that and I read that when you launched that, and your rankings on that have been phenomenal. So I don't think that you have a lack of audience for that. So I'm positive Joe will get his production costs back.
All right, let's hope so. The problem is keeping the rankings up once you finish the series and you start working on something else.
Well, hopefully that's when all those readers are like, we need another one in that, world. So
yeah, well, we will find out. I guess we'll do a show with just us in May and do some updates. But let me hand you to the guys now, and then we'll ask some more marketing stuff later on.
Yep. My production costs were pretty low. I'm confident I'll be doing okay. But all right, so I'm always curious about this. Whenever an author has a genuine in-depth knowledge in the area that they're writing fiction in, do readers ever correct you in the books that you write?
Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, like if it comes to the actual medical science, I don't think I've had any corrections there. Although I did have a correction on the veterinary science before. So yes, that that has still happened. And I do have people. It is kind of scary when I get an email from like another PhD in like an area that like virology or something, which I don't know that much about and just kind of use my biology knowledge for. And so they'll send me an email, and I always do hesitate when I open that, like, what did I do wrong? And yeah, so sometimes they definitely you still get corrections. You can't know everything.
Yeah. Plus, another thing that always sort of I find interesting is sometimes something scientifically accurate is not as it's depicted in popular media, and
Yes.
as a result, when you do it the right way, it seems unrealistic to the reader. Any of that come up for you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was kind of funny because sometimes when I try to, I mean, like I hate in the zombie genre. There's kind of like this understanding that a vaccine is this magic cure-all for zombies and stuff like that. And so from my very pedantic, scientific point of view, a cure is very different than a vaccine, for instance. Something that treats a disease is very different than something that prevents it. And so, yeah, you do definitely get people that get mad at you because it's like, well, hey, I thought you said you came up with the cure, but now all of a sudden they're coming up with a vaccine now. It doesn't make sense. Why are they wasting their time? Vice versa. So for sure, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think the pop culture kind of references the ease at which, like, especially television shows just throw out jargon as if it's truth. Definitely confuse that.
Absolutely. And it's funny because sometimes it's something that would be a very interesting part of the real interpretation of something is ignored, like, okay, we've developed the vaccine. But there's never the third act twist where they don't have the capacity to develop it in volume in order to actually treat all of the cases.
Yes. Yeah. That's been a huge problem in a lot of things. Like, yeah, your world is, completely erupted. There's no power. There's no transportation systems, communications is lacking, but all of a sudden we've found the vaccine. So what good does that do? Like you said, if you can't produce it.
Yeah. All right. So when you're dreaming up a story that touches on an actual area of research or interest for you, do you start with the nugget of reality and build a story around it, or do you plot the story and fill in the blanks with interesting research?
Oh, what I used to do was I would take the research and build a story around it, but that was in my days that my books didn't sell. So now I find the story that I think people actually want to read, and then I try to justify, like, okay, I have these crazy monsters that are growing these kind of body parts or whatever. How do I scientifically explain that with some nugget of truth? So I think it works best if you're going to kind of write to a market, and this is what I've done is, like fill in those like unknowns with nuggets of truth to try to justify the crazy things that are actually happening.
I think it's probably the best way to go about it because, I mean, all else fails, a good story is still a good story.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you don't want to have a really cool idea to build a story around, but then you're so up on the idea that the story never comes together.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right, I got one more question, and then I'm going to add one from the chat. But have you written any stories that began with you like looking at sort of a piece of reality and thinking to yourself, "Boy, I sure hope that doesn't happen," and then you just wrote a story where that happened?
um, I guess like the zombie genres kind of fit that very nicely. Like, I hope that doesn't happen, but I also don't think that could ever scientifically happen. So I'm not too worried because I know the science stuff. So that kind of fits it. But I do love it when people say, like, "Oh my gosh, this could actually happen," and the science is, is just right in there. You could actually see this happening. You're like, I'm glad you think that.
Right. Yeah. At least it shows I did my job right as the author. All right, and just because it's come across in the YouTube chat, people are sort of interested. You were talking about how you write medical thrillers, and how would you define a medical thriller for people who don't know what it is?
I think the standard medical thriller, which my stuff is all a little bit different than the standard medical thriller, but if you look up somebody like Robin Cook or Michael Palmer, Those are two very successful traditional authors in the medical thriller genre, and it basically stems around usually a scientist, more often a medical doctor, that is involved in some kind of conspiracy or mystery that has a medical component to it. So there's some kind of mysterious disease, patients are dying of unknown causes, there's some kind of corporation that's paying off doctors to kill their patients or some crazy thing like that. Or some books I think that Michael Palmer even wrote feature HMOs as the bad guys. So I think
funny.
anytime you get those in there, yeah.
Yeah, all right. I joked in the chat that I feel like every zombie movie is just the sequel to a medical thriller that didn't turn out well.
I like that definition.
All right, well, that's all I've got for this section, so I'll hand you off to Jeff for a few more questions.
Alrighty. Okay, it's Anthony. So having a PhD in bioengineering clearly means you know your field. My question is, do you worry about divulging too much info, like too much description? I mean, most of us have read books where the book might have way too many description, too many pages of imagery. Do you feel you have to tone it down at all for the average reader?
Yeah. So like for instance, most of science really is super boring. When we're in the lab, we spend like 3 weeks, and literally all you might be doing is moving a very clear liquid into another very clear liquid in a plastic dish. So trying to describe that and making that exciting just doesn't ever work. So yeah, I think there comes a point where no matter as much scientifically accurate as I want to be, it's much better to kind of gloss over those details and get to the results and stuff rather than what the science actually entails. So I think that was that having just enough detail and especially being careful of jargon has been something that I have to watch when I incorporate any of those science things.
I always found it interesting to throw in a word there and make the person actually tap and highlight the word and look it up because I'm not sure what it means. I've used a couple of those words. I think I used a bifurcate, and
Yeah.
I had a lot of beta readers like, "What the hell is that? You really need to take this word out. We're not going to know what this word is." I'm like, "Look it up. There's all these things have definitions and all kinds of ways to find out what that word actually means." So I vetoed that. But
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Having people look it up isn't so bad. I mean, I'm looking up English words all the time when I'm reading a book, and I'm sure you guys maybe you guys know what I'm talking about. But if you start reading a paperback book and you get to a word you don't know, I have that feeling like I got to touch it, and I realize it's not going to work.
I do the same thing. I first started reading on a little Palm TX, and I got to the point I was reading some of the old books I had on there, and I went to swipe my finger on the screen, and nothing's happening. I'm like, what the stupid? Oh wait, this thing has a stylus, and I pulled out the stylus and did that, but that was crazy. But okay, I've got another question for you. I was reading your bio there. You say that in your bio you travel to search for new story ideas. Can you tell us where you've been and how it has affected your writing?
So I guess I have different kind of things in here. I like actually traveling to a place, and I can't remember, somebody said this, some travel quote, but it's like as much research as you can do and as many pictures as you can look at, 1,000 pictures are worth like one visit to a place. And so I've kind of found that where I go to places not necessarily searching for a story, but trying to observe things that would fit into a good story. So back in November, I went with some buddies and we went to Morocco. And that was a complete, that was somewhere that I don't think pictures or talking to people who've been there can justify, or can help you create the images and stuff that I got out of that. So that has now, inspired an entire short story in and of itself. But then other things that I like to do is pay attention to things. I mean, like my daily life, I tend to take things for granted the way things are, around where I've lived. But then recently I was in Taiwan and just talking to people there and learning kind of like the philosophy of religions and just ways to live your life that I had no idea of or very little idea of over here, as well as just seeing weird little things like betel nuts, which I've never heard of, which are kind of this amphetamine drug thing that you can just buy off a bunch of peddlers on the streets, for especially popular with truck drivers. So it's these weird little details like that all of a sudden I find inspiring things and like my science fiction even. So I've got two different methods where either I'll come up with a story about a place or involving that place, or where I think just paying attention to the details surrounding your life, or by talking to people, you can find out these things that you can incorporate into stories. And that's what I've done, or what I've tried to do by, I guess, in a lot of the science fiction.
So you've written thrillers with apocalyptic, science fiction, and medical themes. Have you ever thought about trying your hand at a completely different genre? Something that you don't have much experience or knowledge in?
Yeah, actually, space opera was that, because I hate to say it, but before I was interested in writing space opera, I hadn't ever read space opera, and so I'd never. All I did was I've seen shows like Firefly, and of course Star Trek, Star Wars, all the typical kind of space adventures, Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff. But I had never actually read books until I decided I wanted to write one. And so then, of course, I just started devouring space opera books there. So that fits into that. But that's taken a long time to catch up and make sure that, I'm kind of writing to what readers expect. So I think I'm good right now, not trying to jump into another unknown genre.
Okay, so if you've never read a space opera, what possessed you to go, I'll bet I can do that?
It was more like, I was vaguely curious because this was before Chris Fox wrote like the Right to Market and stuff, and I'd been talking to a couple other authors, and we were like, one guy I knew just did a pseudonym, and he published a space opera book, and it was very successful. So I was like, okay, well, if my post-apocalyptic doesn't work out, this was when I first started it, then I guess space opera is the next thing I'm going to try. So honestly, like that's what initially inspired me. And then when I started getting into it, I was like, okay, I can do something with this because I can incorporate some science and do some different things that I like to do that I don't think have been done as much in the genre.
Well, you realize now you've jinxed yourself. You've been talking about the medical thrillers. I mean, everyone's going, oh, I can do that.
Dude, if somebody does, yeah, if somebody does, I would be so happy because then they'd pave the way so I can get back into that.
Yeah, I hear you. All righty, well, that's it for my questions. Let me hand you back over to Lindsay. We'll get you going on the marketing side of things.
All righty. Looks like most of your books are in Kindle Unlimited right now, but you have one series that isn't. I think that's the medical thrillers.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the program, and are you going to stick with it for the long term?
Yeah, absolutely. I got all my traction from getting into Kindle Unlimited, and as long as my books are still doing well and getting page reads, I'm probably going to stick with Kindle Unlimited for new series. I never had much of an audience when I was initially wide before Kindle Unlimited came out, so I didn't really lose much by throwing all my books into the Kindle Unlimited basket. But I think my strategy moving forward is when things start to taper off and I'm no longer so reliant on Kindle Unlimited, or it's not paying out for those books as well, then I'm going to switch to wide with them, just to kind of put the seeds out there in these different vendors. So that's what I've done with the medical thriller series. Definitely wasn't selling, definitely wasn't hot, but figured I might as well go wide with it because I have nothing to lose if it's just stagnant in Kindle Unlimited.
Do you think that's because you kind of mentioned earlier, it sounded like those readers may typically only read a book a month, as opposed to the post-apocalyptic people sound like more rabid readers?
Yeah, you're probably right on that. I actually haven't given that a thought, but the people who buy or who are into Kindle Unlimited, like you said, if they're only buying a book a month, Kindle Unlimited really isn't worth it. So I may not be gaining that much by trying to put a medical thriller into Kindle Unlimited. Yeah.
See, it sounds like, for the ladies, the romance is the stuff where all the rabid readers are in Kindle Unlimited. So maybe the guys that don't read the romance, they're going for the military sci-fi and the zombie books. That's their romance.
Yeah, you're probably right.
All right. In your original email to me, you mentioned that you liked the idea of a 99-cent perma-free, I think, for maybe a book one. Are you still doing that? And what are your thoughts on, do you think that's kind of replaced? Did I say 99-cent perma-free? I think I did.
Never taught you. Yeah, but
yeah, a permanently 99-cent book, maybe replacing the idea of a perma-free book.
Yeah, so that worked out really well for me, and I don't know if this is something repeatable or not, but I did notice when I initially started gaining traction with the Tide series, I actually published the first book and it did pretty well, but it didn't do anywhere near, like, I could never make a living off of how it did. But then the second book came out, and again, it did pretty well for its launch, and I was pretty happy with it considering my poor track record before that. But again, that kind of like dwindled over the couple months until I got the third book out. And so this is a roundabout way to answer that question, but this is where I got onto the Perma 99 cent deal. Was when I released that third book, I also did a 99-cent sale on book one while it was still in Kindle Unlimited. I did not do a Kindle countdown because I wanted it to be permanently 99 cents until I decided to take it off that sale. And I used all the typical newsletter promotional opportunities like e-reader news today, free Kindle books and tips, that kind of thing. And I noticed that once that rank spiked after all those newsletters, the 99-cent book stayed roughly at the same rank, and it stayed pretty high in the ranks, and there was a fairly high read-through rate. So I kept it 99 cents, released the fourth book, and then again, the whole series skyrocketed. And I think what was going on initially there is when you publish a book and you've got some readers on your mailing list, that those readers, of course, are going to buy that book, and you get that release day bump. And that release day bump is enough to throw that up in the charts. So people that were interested in the post-apocalyptic genre, for instance, were saying, hey, this is a cool cover. But this is the fourth book in the series. I don't want to buy this. And so then they go back and they, look at the other books you have in the series. And it's hard to pass up that 99-cent book if you think, oh, the fourth or fifth book in that series looks cool. So that was really helping me out and kind of building off itself, releasing those books within 3 months of each other, and keeping that at 99 cents. I noticed that only changed when the Prime Reading program came out, and Prime Reading, I was lucky to get the Tide into the Prime Reading program right away. But as soon as my book was in Prime Reading, the 99 cents was no longer as effective, and people were just picking it all up for free. So I put the price up to $2.99. And as long as it was in Prime Reading, it stayed the same. I tried to do another 99 cents, Perma 99 cents deal with the Tide back in February after getting a book club for it, because I thought, what other better time to do that? But I actually found that when I put the book back up to $2.99, my read-through rates, or the amount of sell-through I was getting, stayed about the same. And I only reduced the people picking up the 99-cent book when it was now $2.99 by about 10 to 20%. So I was actually making more money by putting it back to $2.99. So I think it's good for short period, but if it's Perma 99 for more than a few months, it may not be as powerful as a tool. But yeah, I know that's a really long answer to that, but that's kind of been my whole experience with Perma 99.
I'll say I had left my first book at 99 cents for months and months last year. And then after I was done with the series and not paying attention to it anymore, I made it $3.99. It had dropped a little bit, and it dropped quite a bit at that point. So I'm now going back to 99 cents as I'm launching the spin-off series. Just from my observations, I feel like the first book at 99 cents might not be a bad idea, especially if you're not really to market and not hitting on the real popular tropes, and maybe not in the hot zombie genre or something like that. It might keep you up there a little longer and keep people trying it, even if it's less to market. So that's just my thoughts on it. But yeah, I've definitely seen people who do like a 99-cent launch, but then just throw it up to $3.99 or $4.99. And if it's in Kindle Unlimited, they do great, especially if it's kind of exactly what the audience wants. That always helps. I haven't managed to do that too much myself, but I've seen it do well for others.
Yeah, and I think kind of like going into periods, I mean, it depends on how much your book drops between, right? Going 99 cents to $2.99. Mine didn't drop too much after I've experimented with it, which is why I've stayed at $2.99. But before, I was loving where it was performing at 99 cents. The only drawback there is some promotional like newsletters, like BookBub won't take you for a 99 cents promotion if it's been 99 cents for that long. So that was one of my major reasons for switching it up. So that is another thing to consider. But then if you're at 99 cents, you can always make it free and do a free book club if if you're really concerned about that.
Yeah, it's definitely true that it's going to look more appealing to them going from like $3.99 to 99 cents. Although people are having a lot of hard time getting book clubs regardless these days.
Yeah,
but
especially
and the free
Kindle
ones,
Unlimited.
yeah, the free ones seem a little easier to get. I just got one for, after getting rejected from my stuff in Kindle Unlimited, I got one for my fantasy that's wide. I kind of wonder too if they're maybe not cracking down, but just really, I've noticed that most of them are not in Kindle Unlimited of the last few weeks. I was looking through the archives, so maybe a little tougher to get those going forward.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. BookBub is getting way more particular about if you have a book going wide, just from talking to other authors and stuff. The experience has been we can have a good, highly rated series in Kindle Select now, and it will never get selected. But your series that's like 4 years old, that's wide with a quarter of the reviews, they'll select it. And I think it's just because it's wide. So yeah,
it's too bad because a box set, if you get a 99-cent book, Bob, it's also in Kindle Unlimited. Those page reads on the box set are awesome. All right. I did want to ask you about your audiobooks, because it looks like you've done some on your own through ACX, and then also was it Blackstone Audio that did one of your series? What's your experience been with producing and marketing those so far?
So I have been involved in ACX since October of last year, or since October of 2015. And that, of course, I guess for anybody unfamiliar with that, is like the self-publishing of an audiobook. And that it involves a lot more of your narration selection, got to select your own cover, and of course you're writing your own blurb. So you also have to proof listen to the book when you get it back from the narrator, unless you've got a good narrator that's sending it through their own editors to proof listen to that. So that takes a lot of time, and obviously the money you've got to front. But being in a hot genre, I think it's totally worth it if you want to go that route and you have the time to go with that. Which with the post-apocalyptic, every time I release one of those audiobooks, they usually pay for themselves within a month or so. So I've enjoyed that experience, but it's also a ton of work, and trying to, like I said, do all the proof listen and find narrators and stuff like that can be a pain if you don't already have a system set up for that. Working with Blackstone has been great because I do nothing. I just send them the book, and the only thing they ever ask for is my word list. So of course it's science fiction that they have, and they have a bunch of words that they'll send back to me that they want pronunciations for, and that's the only real amount of work I have to put into working with them. Of course, the drawback is I had no say in like the cover. They just took my blurb that I wrote for the ebook, and other than that, I kind of got to work with them a little bit on the release dates and when the next books are going to come out on audio. But yeah, it's a very, very hands-off approach. But yeah, Blackstone has been a great company to work with, though, publishing-wise, as far as royalties they offer and the people that they work with, and generally the quality of the books they produce too. So I've definitely appreciated that.
Yeah, it sounds like I've had a pretty similar experience with Podium Publishing, where they pretty much handle everything except ask for the pronunciations on character names and such. And I keep handing them more books because that's easy,
Yeah.
But if somebody wanted to do it themselves, I think ACX is a great opportunity too, because you do get to pick everything. And I've hired out the proof listening to someone else. But I've never done like a hot series through ACX, which makes me curious about how much more potential there would be for earning. I'm kind of doing my backlist stuff. So, and especially if, I don't know how Blackstone is, but usually like with Podium, it's probably about 6 months after the book comes out before the audiobooks, I'd say on average, that's how mine's been. And by that time, your ranking may be sliding. Mm-hmm. So I think Chris Fox did his Destroyer last year, and it seems like he had the audiobook ready to go like within a month or so. So you could totally take advantage of that. And if you're on the ball and get it out there to, when the book's still ranking under 500 in the store.
Yeah. I guess that brought up a couple things. Because Blackstone, for the first book, it did take me a while because they were only interested in the book after they saw the rankings of Eternal Frontier initially. So when they saw where that was, and at the time it was like in the top 1,000 when I first released it, and for like the first month it was sitting up there. But yeah, by the time we had gone through negotiations, signing contracts and stuff, they actually didn't get the first book released until today. So today's when it released. But the second book on audio, they've been really great about, because now that I have this deal all worked out, the second book released was the last week. I got the ebook, and then I sent them the manuscript at about the same time, and they're going to have that out in June. So yeah, depending on, I mean, I've heard different experiences with different publishers, but Blackstone's been great at being really quick with the sequels once you get that initial, buy-in, and a couple of my friends who have books through them have had the same experience. But I hope you don't mind. I do have a question for you, because I think this is helpful. Like, how did you go about finding a proof listener for your book?
The first time, I think I just posted on Facebook, touch with my fan base. And then now the last couple of ones, one of my regular beta readers has been doing it. And I do pay, like X amount of however many hours are in the books, I pay her an hourly to listen to it and follow along with the manuscript. So you could just appeal to your listener base, especially if somebody likes the audiobooks already.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, well, that's good to hear, because I think I'm at the point where I definitely need that, and I got to recommend that to anybody else doing ACX, because it's like 10, 13 hours out of your time just to listen to your own book after you've read it for, I don't know, the 10th or 12th time. Even if it's great, it gets a little old.
Yeah, I have a hard time listening to my stuff too, because I'm super critical of it. But have you done any different marketing, depending on whether they did it or you put your own book out?
I've actually done all kind of the same marketing, put it out to my news list, make a Facebook ad. And that's kind of been the extent of it. I think the biggest marketing, honestly, for audiobooks comes with marketing the ebooks. And so I try to make a promotional push for the ebooks, because at least in my experience, people love the deal where, like, if you can get a book for 99 cents and, Kindle has that match price for the audiobook for like $2.99 or $3.99 more, every time I have an ebook sale, the audiobooks skyrocket. So that's kind of been my strategy. And it's the same strategy, whether it's my ACX books or the Blackstone books, because right now there's no way to do a countdown in an audiobook or change the price. So we're kind of limited to that.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from most people, is you just kind of, there's a few things you can do, but mostly if you plug in the ebooks, hopefully some of the people will cross over, especially if there's that Whisper Sync deal. All right, last question for me is actually from Edward. Do you do audiobook box sets?
I haven't yet, so I don't want to offer too much on that. But everybody I've talked to that has done it in a long series has had pretty good success. So if you've got like 8 books out and they do the first 3 in a box set, that's turned out pretty well, because of course Audible listeners love to get 33 hours of material for one credit, and then if you've got them hooked onto the series, that's more good news for you. So it's in the plans for the Tide once I get to, I think, about book 6 or book 7, and then I can put out an audiobook set on books 1 through 3 without cannibalizing my sales of those audiobooks too much.
All right, let me briefly say my experience with this, because my understanding is that Audible will only let you do one or the other. You can have like a 3-book box set, or you can have the 3 individual titles, but they won't let you do both. That's what I've heard from Podium, because we actually did my Dragon Blood series was the first thing they did with me, and I had 3 books in one 99-cent box set that was selling really well. And surprise, surprise, the audiobook did really well, because like you were saying, 30 hours for 1 credit. And I think there's even a Whisper Sync deal on it. But then we tried it again with another series, and I guess Audible kicked it back and said, no, you have to either do the complete series as a box set or the individual titles. They didn't want both in their catalog. So don't know if anybody else has had any different experience, but that was what I was told most recently.
Oh yeah, so that might have changed, because I've seen people do that in the past, where they they have the single titles plus the box sets. That's unfortunate news. Well, and
it's possible that maybe Audible scrutinizes what they send through a little more closely, because they work out deals with each of the books as opposed to ACX. But I don't know. I would love to have that option too, for all the reasons we've talked about.
Yeah.
All right, let me hand you to Joe for a few more questions.
All right. Well, the first question, this is actually, we were just discussing it a little bit, but it seems like I've done ACX and traditional audiobook publishing also. And it seems like audiobooks, at least through those two methods, are one of the areas where indie authors don't really have any more flexibility with regards to pricing than traditional authors do. So from the audiobook point of view, traditional authors and indie authors are pretty much on a level playing field. Do you wish that that would change? Like, are there any marketing methods you feel should be available to indie authors that are not available for audiobooks?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be great, because kind of the way you put it is like the indie world of publishing audiobooks is back where Amazon and stuff was, what, like 6-7 years ago or something, maybe before that. And so all those tactics like perma freeze, your 99-cent sales, things like that would be, I could just see how that would make a huge difference in audiobook sales, because that's why people join Audible, right, and pay the monthly membership, is because presumably they're getting a better deal on a book and they get more entertainment. And people who listen to books, and are members of Audible, generally devour Audible or audiobooks like people in Kindle Unlimited devour ebooks. So I can only imagine if you had like a perma-free Audible book, how well that would do right now. Because if you're a member, you've used your credit for the month, but you can get this, 15-hour book or whatever for free. That would be tremendous. So that would be great. But then I think, we would see the repeat cycles that we've seen of, perma-free kind of slowly losing effectiveness, and the 99-cent sales changing effectiveness over time. But that being said, that would be wonderful if Audible implemented that. But I don't think they will, because they've got kind of that stranglehold on the Audible membership right now.
That's very true. And I feel like there's a lot of the people who are in the audiobook biz are crossovers from the music industry. And the music industry is extremely aware of the devaluation aspect that comes along with that. All right. So another thing I have to ask is, you've done ACX. Do you do the pay up front or the royalty split?
I always do the pay up front. I found initially when I was doing auditions, all the narrators that I kind of wanted to be paid up front. And to be honest, that's kind of nice having it paid up front now, because once I take care of that deal, then all the royalties are mine. So that sounds really selfish, but it's kind of nice when you can have the extra money there.
Yeah, that was my observation as well. Is the better the narrator, the more they're aware that a book might not be a hit, so they're to get their money, and it works out better for everybody if you get to keep everything afterwards too. Plus, I think that might limit you. I forget exactly, but I think you have to do the exclusive deal. So if you want to do wide and have the option of selling your own audiobooks, you can't do it that way.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right, I got one more, and this is, two more technically. I guess I should be referencing something that's going by in the chat. But this was discussed a little bit earlier too, but for the more vanilla forms of sci-fi and fantasy, it's usually pretty obvious what the authors are you should be using to sort of set your benchmark for what the market is after. And for the kind of people that we'd want to show up in their also bots, that would be a win for us. And you mentioned earlier that, you mentioned some medical thriller authors that are sort of the byword of the genre. What about the others that you're writing, like apocalyptic? Is there what are the authors for that genre that you should sort of be seeking their tropes and audiences?
So I think in post-apocalyptic, there's a lot of names that are doing successful both in traditional and indie. So I'm probably not going to get everybody, but I can kind of talk about the crowd I hang out with that you see in those lists all the time. But Jonathan Mayberry, he's a traditional author, and I think he's all over the place. He's got a lot in the post-apocalyptic zombie stuff before I think it was huge in the indie world. And then of course Bobby Adair, Mark Tufo, Sean Chesser, Tom Abrahams, Nicholas Sansbury Smith, I know I'm probably forgetting a few guys, but yeah, that's those are probably some of the ones that you see in the top lists of PA or post-apocalyptic fiction all the time, and those are the guys that I try to get into my Alphabots.
Right. And yeah, it's disturbingly useful to know the people
Yeah.
who are commanding the entire audience, because you don't want to rip off story ideas or anything like that, but it's very important to know what satisfies that audience, because that's the audience you want to satisfy. And before I hand you off to Jeff, apparently there's some talk about for the people watching the video, there is a brown chair visible over my shoulder, and it only moves when I play the Nintendo Switch. So if it doesn't move at all between casts, I've been having a very productive week.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So you got Breath of Wild?
Oh yes, I have lost 9 hours to that game.
Yeah, there goes the writing productivity, right? Same here. Same here.
All right. So I'm going to hand you off to Jeff now for the last couple questions.
Yeah, I saw that message show up in the chat. I was like, about that brown chair. I was like, man, that's freaking hysterical. But okay. All right, Anthony, what types of social networking do you use?
I just use Facebook. I tried Twitter. I think I have a Pinterest. I might have Instagram, but I don't use that stuff because I found, at least for me, Facebook has been the best way to interact with fans. And that's interacting with the fans that I already have. And then, of course, you can't beat email and direct newsletter or reaching out to people too. So I keep it simple and focus on the newsletter and the Facebook.
And for the record, I love how you said you tried Twitter. I'm not that good at Twitter either. I don't even bother with it. So,
I feel like it's just a lot of yelling into empty space. And Facebook is so much better because you can people actually see that and interact with that far more.
All right. Okay. Author branding is something practically every author we interview seems to agree on. You definitely want to make it clear that the books are part of the series and are professionally made. So the covers you've done for the Tide series, how far in advance did you do those 5 covers?
I do them as I finish up a book. So I've got somebody that for the first one, she kind of designed the template when I was writing it, and then we've just gone there. So fortunately, I have an author or an artist that has pretty quick turnaround, and it's kind of putting it on, I guess, lazy mode for me.
Yeah, I was looking at the 5 of them, and you can clearly see they all have 5 have the same theme there. I was just wondering, maybe because we've heard of some authors that say they take the same picture, they'll tweak it a little bit and just like add different shades of different coloring here and there, so that way you can get 5 different covers there. But yeah, yours looked really good there. So, and being a sci-fi author, if you were ever given the chance to jump backward in time, is there any advice you'd give to a younger version of yourself?
Don't write near future medical thrillers. There's no audience, or at least no audience for me. but that being said, you know what? I'm glad I learned, or I hope I'm still learning how to write. But I'm glad my first few books weren't hits out of the gates, so that way all my terrible cringeworthy mistakes are kind of stuffed in those books that only real fans will ever read.
I love how you didn't even have to take a breath. As soon as I asked the question, there was the answer.
Yeah, there were many hours and a lot of time put into that never paid off.
Awesome. All righty, that is it for my questions. I think, unless Lindsay, are you aware of any others?
I'm just curious, if you did another medical thriller, would you think of trying to get a traditional publisher? Because it seems like they do have made some big names in the genre.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right on that. I would go for the traditional publisher on that, and I would definitely not make it a science fiction type of medical thriller. But yeah, for some of those genres, you might as well go for the traditional. And then I guess if I tried that, or anybody else tried that, you always have the option to self-publish later, so why not?
Yeah, I actually started out doing children's stories that did not sell at all, and I happened to be publishing an adult fantasy at the same time, which sold 4 copies or something, which was way more than the children's stories. So it got me excited for the adult fiction. And I said, if I ever do children's stories again, I'll just try to get a traditional publisher.
Yeah.
I think it's too tough to do on ebook and self-publishing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's about it for us. Do you want to tell us where people can find you? And is there one book of yours in particular you want them to check out?
So you can find me on my website, which is anthonyjmelchiorri.com. But since I don't expect people to be able to spell all that right off the bat, I'd say Eternal Frontier or The Tide are probably the series that I'm most excited about right now, and the ones that are doing well for me. So that's the easy starting point if you wanted to look at something I've written, or connect with me through there, because all the links to my Facebook website and my failed Twitter account are also documented on my Amazon author page.
They'll be like, I keep tweeting this guy and he never answers me. What a jerk. All right. I will put the link to your site and to your book ones there on our site. If anybody wants to come by, this is episode 128 on marketingsff.com. Come on by, and don't forget, I'm so bad at plugging my stuff. You guys, I love the internet. You can buy American Demon Hunter Sacrifice now and see the collaborative project we all did. And if you make it to the end, or skip to the end, you can enter to win a slot on the Sci-Fi and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, where I will introduce you just as well as I introduced Anthony today.
Yeah, A+ on the name.
I wrote it down phonetically so I could say it, and then I started laughing just looking at it. I'm like, I just forget it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Anthony, and thank you for listening and watching on YouTube, everyone. Have a great week.
Nice to meet you, Anthony. Thanks for all the info.
Thanks for having me.
So long, everybody.